Welcome, everybody, to the weekly edition of the HDI Local Chapters live stream show. Our show is brought to you by Robert Half, a talent solutions and leading provider of technology professionals firm for people when you need to build and deploy and operate technology in the cloud and digital world. And they do this by placing highly skilled IT professionals either on a contract basis, a project basis, or even a full-time permanent basis to basically help you keep your businesses going. You can browse available candidates, you can search for jobs, and you can access additional valuable information on hiring and career insights on their website at roberthalf.com/technology. Okay, so let's get on with the show. Today our guest is a really good friend of mine, as we mentioned in the pre-show, Beth Lynn Nolen. And Beth Lynn is a technology enthusiast who managed to turn her love for computers into a career. And we want to know more about that today. She especially enjoys helping others get the most out of technology that they work with on a daily basis, whether it be Photoshop or HTML, Premiere Pro, things that I know the names of but don't know how to use. And interesting enough, and we're going to get into a little bit of this too, Beth lives on a small farm with 2 friends, 5 cats, 5 chickens, although we did talk about you just recently downsized that, and learning, this is really cool, and we definitely want to hear more about this, learning to play the ukulele. Awesome.
Yep.
So, but her work involves teaching technology skills to the Indiana University community as part of her IT training. So welcome to the show, Beth.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So let's kick this off. I mentioned to you, when I met with you originally, that this is a quick show and you and I can talk and gab and go on forever. So we got to keep this short and snackable to 15 minutes. So let's kick this off by telling us the interesting story of like how you got into computers as a career.
Okay. Well, I've always had a fascination with technology and with using computers. When I was younger, I taught myself how to code in BASIC on a little 2-line LCD screen computer, and then taught myself HTML and just really enjoyed working with computers. And after a little while, when I went to college, I got my bachelor's degree in art history of all things. So that is one of my multiple degrees there. But while I was working on my degree in art history, I worked for computing and technology services at the State University of New York at Potsdam. It started out at their help desk, then went to work in the Instructional Technology Center. And as I was working in the Instructional Technology Center, my old boss said, "Hey, if you ever want to get a master's degree, maybe you should think about going into educational technology, because a lot of what you're doing here is things you'll learn in that degree, and just seems right up your alley." And so I thought about it for a little bit. And in the meantime, on the side, I was giving computer lessons to some faculty, just helping them get used to get used to their computers, learn how to use things like Photoshop, and all of which, like Photoshop and HTML and just a number of other technology related things, was largely self-taught in. I just picked stuff up and just said, "Hey, I'm going to run with it." And so when I was working on through my master's, I was helping faculty learn how to use their computers, just, on just a one-on-one basis. And then as I worked through school, as I worked through the Ed Tech Masters and was helping people learn how to use their computers, neared the end of my degree program, and my ex-husband and I were getting ready to move to Bloomington, Indiana, and I was looking for jobs there. And I found what looked like it was going to be the most perfect job for me. It was a part-time job as a workshop assistant. So I would be helping people in technology workshops get through, like, for example, if they got lost as we were going through the material, I'd help catch them up, and maybe I could teach someday. So I applied for it. I said, "I'm not going to get this job. This job is too perfect." And ended up interviewing, was told at the end of the interview, like, "Oh, I'll probably they'll probably get back to me within 2 weeks. If I don't hear from them, reach out." 2 hours later, I heard back and said, they said, "Congratulations, you've got the job." And so that was a little over 10 years ago. And since then, I've been with IT training. I started out as a workshop assistant, moved on to instructor. And then from there, I started editing materials. So like editing and writing the training content that we use in our workshops. And then eventually I was hired full-time. And as full-time, as in my full-time role at IT Training, I am the video development coordinator. So I work on putting together the video trainings that we do and any videos that we have that supplement our online courses. And after a little while, after a little bit of some reorganization at University IT Services, I also ended up being our materials development coordinator. So chances are, if there's content that you're looking at on IT Training's website, it has gone through my hands at some point in some way, whether I've written it, whether I've done the final edits and quality assurance checks on it. Yeah, a little bit of everything. So,
well, so that's cool. And I wanted to say, comment on a couple things there, because like one of the things we wanted you on the show is to share with people again that you don't have to have had any computer experience or knowledge necessarily when you're in high school or college. You might find out, like many of us have done, you get through like I went through to a business school, and I got through 2 years of business school for an associate's degree, and I went, I absolutely can't stand this degree that I got, the work involved in it. And so I kind of fell into technology very similarly. And so the point is, like, I wanted the audience to hear another story of like, you don't have to have come from a technology background to get in. And I will say this too. I wanted to say I have hired enough people. Now I call musicians, so it's funny you're learning the ukulele. I call musicians artists as well. And I can tell you some of the best people I've ever hired were, well, they claim to be amateur musicians and artists, but their work is phenomenal. And I think I think artists, the mind you have just makes a fantastic technical person. I don't know, because I can't do any of the stuff you guys, like I can't play an instrument. I did play trombone in high school and band, but I mean, I'm talking like professionally, or even like anything with strings, that's just 5-6 too many things for me to keep track of. And so I think you're so talented, and you bring a lot of brilliance to the table. You can read music, you're doing it, you're playing, you're creating it, your artwork. And I know you and I have talked, and you crochet. I mean, you do a lot of just cool things. This
is one of my blankets back there. So and I also, and it's funny you describe it as an artist, because I also do digital drawings, digital artwork as well. I mean, again, as you said, like everybody says, oh, they're an amateur at it. And so it's all largely self-taught. I had some art classes when I was working on my undergrad, but I touch on a lot of just creative hobbies. So
I think you said something that was key there for me, is that you said you're self-taught, and most artists are, in my opinion. I mean, you go for lessons maybe and things, but you still have to be self-taught. And so you're so able to do that in technology, because I share this with a lot of people, like when I'm interviewing them for a job and such, is like, I'm not hiring you because you know what you're doing. I want to know if you can work with people, you can be a team player, and you have the ability to learn and figure things out. Because technology, if you knew everything about technology, then we're stagnant and we're stale and we're not growing. So that is key. So and another thing I wanted the audience to hear is, like, we haven't had a guest on like you yet about, like, we've heard a lot of people doing like either sales or recruiting or very technical stuff, but and we've also had knowledge management, but you bring a lot of that to get, like, you're taking the knowledge management and you're actually putting it in a format to teach, to put out on, I assume, out on the web for your university. And so that's really cool. And I know you and I both work for higher ed, and I know we have some folks that until I met you, I didn't know what they really did. I mean, they're recording. So what? They're recording classes, but I've actually taken classes that they've recorded as a student, and I go back and watch the stuff because I can't pay attention. You and I've had that separate conversation. I can't pay attention the whole time, and I go back and watch them, and I'm going, wow, these folks, they like, there's no background sound that's annoying me, like the kid tapping the pencil on the desk, and they phased in and out and did all kind of cool things. So you do some really, really cool stuff with the background things.
Thanks. Yeah. It's, as I said, I like, even with video development, that's one of my roles at IT Training. But even then, I don't have a lot of formal training there. I had one class in video development and production when I was working on my master's in educational technology. And that was it. The rest of it is all largely self-taught. Just said, okay, I know how to use Premiere Pro. I know how to use Photoshop and Illustrator.
I was going to say, in those products, I took a class my last semester for my master's in those, and I was able to use them fairly well. So the fact that you self-taught those, and anybody that knows the Adobe products, those they are, that's some high end.
Yeah.
I will share with you. I use for this show. I actually edit because I'm not privy, because Adobe likes to charge a lot for that. And I don't have that kind of role in my position. I use I think it was like a $15 or $20 editing tool that I got it's called Animotica, and I use it just to do basic stuff, and it works for that kind of stuff because we don't do a lot of editing on this show. But I can only imagine from my brief stint with the Adobe products, like there was a lot there. I had to go back and watch those videos that the people put together for that, just so that I knew what I was doing for my assignments, let alone anything else. So listen, we got about 6 minutes left in the show. I want to get into the part about what I really also like about you is you're really involved with your job and things, but and you do a lot, because I know content is just big, especially during this COVID time period where everything had to be out there, right? So what do you do to keep sane, like when you're not working, or to keep you from like just totally blowing a gasket, while you're because you're always happy and giggling and you're just a happy person. What the heck keeps you so happy?
Well, so mostly it's my creative endeavors. Like one of the things I've mentioned that I do as a hobby is I do a lot of drawing, just digital artwork, just whether it's of just like my role-playing game characters, or just whatever just strikes me as something I want to draw. I've got a really nice drawing tablet, one of the ones with the screens in it too, which is extra nice. And so I do a lot of drawing. When we're not in the middle of a pandemic, I play in a live action role playing game, which is a lot of fun. It gives me a chance to bring a lot of things I enjoy doing together, like performance. It's like improv, and so performance, costuming. So I get to use all of my sewing skills to make my own costumes and stuff.
Oh my goodness.
And playing role playing games, because I love gaming, board games, role playing games. Even video games when I've got the time. And so, and I've also, as mentioned earlier, I've also started learning how to play the ukulele. So
we're going to have you do an outro when we get to that point, because that's just beyond my skill set. But I don't so it's interesting because like most of the things you said, a lot of them are like non-IT related. Like you mentioned, live action role playing, and my wife and I do a lot of RVing, and we went to this one campground, and they had a bunch of people, like a whole bunch of tents one time. Like, where are all these people in tents? Most people here have RVs, and I see them in these costumes, and then all of a sudden they're on this big field, and they're just like having it out with different things.
Oh, I bet you. I know those might have been people from the Society for Creative Anachronism. They're another. It's kind of like live action role playing, but it's medieval reenactment.
They called it. They said, because I didn't know the term, I had to look it up. They said this is LARPing. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh
is
no, they are LARPers. Oh yeah.
No,
then those must have been LARP. Yeah, if they said they were LARPers, then
the costumes were elaborate. And they were serious too, because when you talked to them, they were in their role. They wouldn't even like. I'd ask them a question. They were like, "I'm sorry, sir, but we only have these mugs here." And I'm like, "Wow!" I mean, they really got into it. And it was so cool.
And like people don't even recognize me from the game that I play. Like once I'm out of character, when the glasses go back on and the elf ears come off, and I'm not Eilenier the scholar anymore, people are like, "Wait a second, Beth, is that you?" And I'm like, "Yep, that's me. That's me when I'm not Eilenier." So cool. But it's just it's a way to just set everything else aside and be somebody else for a little bit and just have fun with it. And so, it's one of the things that I've missed dearly during the pandemic. And we had a couple of games this summer, but Delta variant, I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah. Makes things a little uncertain.
So the other thing you do that I thought was interesting is we have on our one committee that we meet, we have a mutual friend of ours who has a background of a wall of board games, and I understand you have a wall of board games yourself.
Yep, I do have a wall of board games.
So I'm going to ask you a very difficult, and I promise, I apologize, I didn't prep you for this, but it just made me think of this it's going to be very challenging for you. What is your favorite board game?
Oh goodness, that is a good question.
Stumper, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think here. One of the games I played recently that I really enjoyed is Call to Adventure. It's it's an interesting game where you take on the role of a hero, or you could be an anti-hero. You start out as just, neutral character, and you're building your character's story. You start out by building their backstory, then choose like things that they're facing currently. And then at the end, it's just like you have like these epic challenges that you might face. And as you go through this, you're like telling a story and telling your character's story. And you can choose to be good. You can choose to be evil. You can choose to be neutral. And so I played that recently. There's even an expansion for one of my favorite book series, The King Killer Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. And so, so we played with that. So it was a lot of fun.
And it doesn't surprise me because of when we talked about you at the beginning of the show, your interest, your creativity and all that just goes right along with it. And sometimes my head hurts. My son is very into stuff like that. Like he plays Magic and D&D. And when he gets, he doesn't just play them, he gets into them. Like he's got to tell me the whole damn backstory of his character all the way back to when the character was a kid. And I'm going, Thomas, you make my head hurt, but he's so creative. I love it. Hey, listen, we have a minute to go. So I wanted to ask you one quick question that I like to ask my guests at the end of the show is, so what advice would you give to somebody looking to get into technology or not sure themselves in getting into technology?
So I'm going to say what I say to the students that I teach when I go out to classes and teach one of the introductory workshops, whether it's introduction to Photoshop or introduction to HTML or just anything where it's students that are like new to a product. What I tell them is just play around, experiment. Don't be afraid to poke around in a specific program or poke around literally in your computer. Probably a little harder to do in a laptop. So if you're going to take apart a computer, take apart a desktop first. But try new things. Don't be afraid to break things. In Photoshop or in HTML or in Premiere Pro or whatever, like desktop applications, you can't really break things. You can make things that may not be pretty, but you can't really break things. When you're working on an actual computer, like actually building a desktop, you can break things. But even then, that's a learning experience because then you can say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have pushed that stick of RAM in that hard. And then it snapped in half. I actually had somebody do that. It was when I was in grad school. We had I think it was like networking and hardware class where the first thing we did was take apart a computer. And one of my classmates, as she was putting it back together, pushed the RAM in too hard and it broke. So
it's funny you say that because when I was teaching hardware class at community college, when I got into it, the faculty there told me they have this great simulator for tearing apart and building a computer. And and my first response was like, how the hell do you teach somebody how to put memory in virtually? Like that's just nuts.
Yeah. That's.
So
you gotta have the experience.
So we're at the end of the show, and I do want to say, first of all, Beth, thanks, and I'm going to ask you. Yeah, I'm glad you're putting that on. And before we go, I just want to remind everybody to check out hdilocalchapters.org to find out more about the organization and how you can become a member and meet great people like Beth. And then also make sure you subscribe to our channels, our Twitch channel, HDI Local Chapters, and YouTube channel, HDI Local. And please share out the links to these shows because we want to pass on this information to our great network. And remember to follow #HDI Local. Take it away, Beth.
Alrighty. So I haven't had the chance to practice much today, so this may not be pretty, but here we go. Yeah.
Anything.
Exactly.
Yep.